Bob Lazar is a nuclear physicist specializing in advanced propulsion systems. In 1989, he was hired by the military to back-engineer the propulsion system of an extraterrestrial craft. Lazar worked at what is undoubtedly the most top-secret research facility in the world, S4.
There was absolutely no ET craft, ET technology, anything like that at Area 51. This is why S4 was made specifically to separate it there. People at Area 51 do not have the clearance.
According to Lazar, the military had not been test flying alien crafts at Area 51. Rather, the discs many had videotaped and photographed were actually being flown out of S4, just several miles away.
The S4 facility is an area just off the Papoose lake bed, dry lake bed, and it consists of 9 hangars. The hangars have sloped doors on them with a sand texture coating. At the time that I was working there at McCarran International Airport in Las Vegas, there was a Special Projects EG&G building. When I was told to go to work, I drove there, parked my car there, got in a plane at the airport, flew to Groom Lake, where I deplaned and waited for a bus, and the bus drove me down to S4. The first disc I saw, I believe it was the second, or I think it was the third time I was up there. Upon seeing it, it struck me that, well, this explains all the UFO sightings. Not thinking that it was an extraterrestrial craft, that this must have been some advanced form of fighter that we've been working on for years, and people have just caught it being tested, so on and so forth. And it never even occurred to me, even though I was looking at an extraterrestrial vehicle, that this wasn't man-made. I give everything nicknames there. The one I worked on was kind of sleek looking, and I gave it the name the Sport model. There was one that looked like a Jell-O mold. There was one that looked like a top hat. There was a disc that was turned up on its side, and it had a large projectile hole with the metal bent outwards on it. I can only surmise they were testing it to see if a projectile could penetrate it.
Bob Lazar explains the gravity propulsion system that he worked on at S4.
It probably really hit me when I got inside the craft and looked around and began to understand how the craft was operated, and finally grasped the whole project as a whole, as what we were doing, the fact that we weren't building this thing, we were trying to find out how it was made. We were back engineering it. When I first got to look inside the craft, all I can say, it's an ominous feeling. You walk in there and it feels as if you shouldn't be there. I know that sounds kind of corny, but it's a real ominous feeling. It's not an exciting feeling. It brings up a whole lot of questions in your mind. I only witnessed one test flight up close, officially. That I was just inside the hangar. The craft lifted off the ground, virtually noiseless, other than a small corona discharge on the bottom of the craft, indicating the presence of high voltage. That dissipated at about 30 feet, and it stood there completely silently and moved over to the left and to the right and sat back down. That was the entire test. This was quite a scientific feat, to lift something completely silently, under control, and perform a maneuver like that. I had to hang upside down in there to see the lower level, essentially, and there were 3 large gravity amplifiers. These devices looked like about a 2-foot diameter, 4-foot long piece of pipe hanging by a smaller piece of pipe from the level above, and they can be independently positioned, and that's what emits the gravitational waves that propel the craft. They'll use one gravity generator to lift the craft off the ground. And as opposed to what we're used to, for instance, a plane, once it's in the air, we envision thrust or some force coming out the back of it to push it forward. The crafts work completely opposite of that. What they do is, once they're hovering in the air, they'll swing the 2 remaining gravity generators up in front of them and create a distortion, essentially a downhill, and the craft rolls downhill for infinity. There's what they call Omicron configuration, where the craft is using one generator, or delta configuration, where it's utilizing all three. Delta configuration would be for space travel. Essentially, the craft will tilt up on its side, focus the three gravity generators to a single point, and move through space that way. It's always chasing a little distortion. That's why they look goofy when they fly around at low speed. Gravity will vary somewhat, and you will get odd movements of the craft. So its low speed mode is kind of unstable for the most part. If you were going to see one of these crafts at night operating, it would appear really as a glowing ball or just a bright light in the sky from a distance. Even close up, you'd see a glowing halo around it. What you're dealing with is a high energy source in essentially a gas atmosphere, oxygen, nitrogen. And when you apply enough energy to a gas molecule, they emit photons, they emit light. Well, when you're on the outside, you pretty much think, how could they keep something like this secret? It's a crime against science, it's a crime against the people and all that, but your feelings change once you're privy to the information. Obviously, the ET craft do exist. Something had to build them, so there must be aliens. And since there are, and the craft are there must be some sort of factory and an entire civilization somewhere. And if in fact that is true, and it apparently is, then there must be others.
I have never met an alien, but I have met an extraterrestrial. Initially, I was briefed that J-Rod was an alien, specifically from the reticulum system, to Reticulum 4. I had no idea the truth. Yes, from 2 Reticulum 4 now, but I had no idea the truth of how they came to be. As I said to you before, I have never met an alien, but I have met an extraterrestrial. I found out subsequent to interactions with the J-Rod. And again, they have personal names. The term J-Rod simply means 15, which was a basing name for where they're located, the number of light years from our location. So they took those names. And they identified through the Sigma protocols, the linguistic protocols, with a rod symbol, which was an inertia symbol, and the letter J. And in fact, that was a combination of Mayan and Egyptian numerology having to do with a rod and a J, meaning 10 and 5 for 15. We had regular systematic medicals by a physician. Following that, we would be suited, we would be catheterized, plugged, and suited. Communication apparatus was placed on our heads. We had a cooling system set up. It was, for all intents and purposes, it was a spacesuit. It was a total encapsulated suit, something like what you would find in a NASA facility. It was more of a regular space-type suit with joints. We were suited up, we were pressurized, and then walked with our cooling system and our hosing down a ramp into the ambassadorial suite. Following that, we were led up a gantry-way, which had been moved into position by the clean sphere, which had been previously rotated up through an iris through the floor. He was held actually below the ambassadorial suite level, and that was raised up as needed. What they did with him down there, he didn't say, and they didn't tell me. It was not a need-to-know issue. Apparently, they dealt with the cleaning of the sphere and all of that down there. The regular housed animal maintenance as they treated him. We would be led up the gantry-way. The hoses would be hooked into an interior system inside the doorway, which was exterior to the clean sphere. And it was called the exterior system, in fact. But when we would be let in, the door would be closed, and we would be pressurized inside of the gantry-way. Following that, there was a drum system that was set up. Once there was an equal pressurization between the gantry-way and the clean sphere, we would then be told to proceed forward. I would raise a hand in acknowledgement. We were not supposed to talk at the time at all because nothing verbal around the specimen, around the J-Rod. Why, I was never told, but we were not supposed to talk around the J-Rod. I believe he and associates were transferred separately. He to the originally to the Groom Lake facility,
Okay.
and an associate to, I believe, Los Alamos. I have no independent verification of where the associate went, though. All I can say is that he was there at Site 4, right? There was a very specific procedure. After we would be brought in with our helper biologists, there was controlling helper biologists, those in the gallery, and then the introduction specialist, which was myself on a number of occasions. We entered the clean sphere through a large series of protocols involving pressurization and compartmentalization, no pun intended, until finally we were pressurized in fully encapsulated a TEC, a TES, total encapsulated suit for entrance into the clean sphere. Once we were pressurized and entered into the clean sphere, well, I should digress, we had a medical evaluation and all of that first. But they ceased doing that after a couple of medical evaluations. It was more just interested, let's get you in and get the work done. I would enter into the clean sphere, and I was not supposed to communicate with the J-Rod at all. I was not supposed to know his name. The reality is we were communicating from the time that I entered into the ambassadorial suite external to the clean sphere, talking back and forth freely. I could hear whatever he was projecting at me from thought, and he could very clearly hear what I was thinking. I say hear, meaning perceive. I was supposed to stand over by a hologram projection system, which was run as like a teleprompter system, over to my right, that would be run inside of the clean sphere glass. Hold my hand up and mimic certain signs. And it became a joke. It really did. It became a joke. Those folks who were watching from the gallery running the show thought that I was standing there and mimicking the signs, and this was the only communication underway. They perceived on the day that the approach, the close approach that he made, the grabbing incident that he did with me, they perceived that there was a communication that occurred. So I began getting questioned quite extensively whether or not he in fact was communicating with me, because he had promised not to, apparently, with the Sigma unit.